Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode in our occasional webinar series for the Northwest Territories that is co-sponsored with the Government of Northwest Territories Knowledge Agenda. And we actually run a few different regional webinar series. We have one that has been focused on Yukon research, one on the Northwest Territories, as I mentioned, and also we have partnered with the Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy, or ACAP, for research presentations that are focused on work being done in Alaska for NASA's Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, or BUV. And the idea with these webinars was a way for both above researchers to be able to share some of their research plans and results with people, with interested peoples, but also to hear about other activities that are happening in the region and that are relevant to the work that we are all doing. And so I'm especially excited that we have Emma here to join us today. Um, Once this webinar is over and we're recording, it'll take a couple days for us to get it up on the website. But it will be available for people to view. And I put some links into the chat. Hopefully everybody can see. I can add those again. Um, where you can see prior webinars that we've had in the series. And if you're interested in joining our email distribution list to learn about future events, you can find information there. And if you're interested in presenting, we're always looking for new presenters to share their work. And please feel free to reach out to me. I've put my email here on this introductory screen. And then finally, I just wanted to do a brief land acknowledgement. So NASA Goddard, where I work, is located in a place politically designated as Greenbelt, Maryland, in the ancestral and traditional lands of the Piscataway and Akochtank or Anacostan peoples. Most attendees, I imagine, for this webinar are participating from places where governments have committed atrocities against Indigenous, Native American, and First Nations people, and our history also includes those who were kidnapped and brought here in the name of colonization and imperialism. And so we would like to acknowledge that the circumpolar Arctic is the home of many different indigenous peoples. We are reminded of their deep connection to this region and our role as researchers to work towards reconciliation with our indigenous partners. Wherever you may be attending this event, please join us in honoring the place-based knowledge of indigenous peoples and recognizing their ancestral and contemporary stewardship of their homelands. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. If I can figure out how to do that. Here it is. And pass the ball over to uh, Emma, who feel free to start sharing your presentation and introduce yourself. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. But if you need to get something out of your head, you can go ahead and put it in the chat box. That would be helpful. And then once we're done, everybody should have the ability to also unmute themselves if they feel they want to ask a question. So go ahead, Emma, and start sharing your screen.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Libby. I'm so excited to be able to share with everyone today the results from the project I've been working on for the past, it's been 8 months now, but it's really flew by. So can everyone see my screen okay here? It should be a title screen.
Yes.
See that okay? Great. Yeah. So like I said, I've been working on this project here for the last 8 months. My name is Emma Riley, and I'm a research coordinator with University of Montreal. And I live in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. So I relocated for this position, which is really advantageous for both myself and my work with this project. Being able to live in the North allows for better communication, in my opinion, and better relationships with the people that are here. So I should probably start talking about this project. It's called Building Local Capacity for Community-Based Micrometeorological Monitoring. But I also refer to it as simply climate change monitoring in Northwest Territories. I like referring to it as such just to make it a bit more accessible to people and understanding what it's all about. So this project is funded by the Future Skills Center. This is a government organization that works to build skills in the Canadian workforce, um, which is a huge part of this project. It's one of our major goals is to enhance the opportunities for scientific skills for locals in the North. So that's kind of what we mean by building local capacity, is building these skills for people in the North and having the opportunities for them to do research on the lands that they live in or live on. So I thought it was fitting that I do a project update for this project, but I'll also introduce the project because, you know, I'm sure not a lot of people know exactly what it's about. So on this title screen as well, I've included, we have many partners for this project, but some of our major partners are co-authors, so to speak. So the lead for this project is Dr. Oliver Sonnentag out of University of Montreal. And we have Andy Vicente Luis, research coordinator with the University of Montreal as well. Dr. Ellen Humphreys with Carleton University, who I see is on this call. And Dr. Philip Marsh and Dr. William Quinton from Wilfrid Laurier University. So thank you so much for all of our partners, but especially these ones here. On the screen as well, I've included a couple photos of some of the main scientific instrumentation that we focus on for the research that we do with this project. So I'm going to get into this in detail a little bit later, but essentially you can see here on the left one of our eddy covariance or micrometeorological towers. So essentially these towers are seeing the land that is within a couple hundred meters of diameter, and they are measuring greenhouse gases from the plants, soil that are being exchanged with the atmosphere. And so this is our major focus for climate change monitoring. But as I'll get into a little bit later, we have expanded our scope to include other ways of monitoring climate change because there are many. So without further ado, I'll get into the meat of it. I've already introduced myself a little bit, but just to give you guys more context for the work that I do, to know what kind of questions I can answer at the end of this presentation. So I'm a research coordinator with the University of Montreal, and through this project, I do various different things. I do a lot of field work, which is my favorite part of this kind of work. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Going out into nature is a really big benefit to the kind of work that I do. So I've included a couple photos here from doing field work. The one on the left is myself during a permafrost probing campaign near Kikiza, Northwest Territories. So this is west of Great Slave Lake. And we actually probed over 100 sites near Kikiza. So it was a big campaign. And then I've also included a photo here. This is actually from my master's thesis work up near Deering Lake, Northwest Territories, which is 300 kilometers from Yellowknife. So it was actually from this work during my master's thesis that led me to pursue this position. So it's kind of fundamental for me, and you can see me doing some greenhouse gas flux measurements here. So fieldwork is a really big part of my position. There's a little bit of data analysis too. From greenhouse gas flux measurements, there's a lot of data. The data sets are really, really large. So often this will go to other people in my research group. But data analysis is really important when you consider eddy covariance in particular. Relationship building and outreach is perhaps the most important part of the work that I do for this project. Building relationships with people in the North is really, really important. Getting to know one another and getting to know what's important to one another is really important when you're doing field work and when you're trying to build local capacity. So I do that mostly virtual communication at first, emails, phone calls, but the in-person communication is what makes these relationships really strong. And then the other part of the work that I do for this project is a course content development. So I've actually developed a virtual online course for members of this project. So this online learning course is intended to go over a lot of the scientific and theoretical background that is sort of necessary to cover before you go up to one of these intimidating stations. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but that's kind of how I contribute to this project. So I'm going to go over some of the scientific background behind the research that we do. So we're all aware the climate is changing, everything is changing, the permafrost, the hydrology, the vegetation. And what we're really interested in on this project is how the greenhouse gas fluxes are changing. So how the exchange of breath or gases between plants, soil, and the atmosphere is changing given how these landscapes are changing. So we're focusing on the regional climate and how these greenhouse gases may impact the global climate. So because there's a lot of land in the north and there's a lot of organic material that is stored either in the vegetation itself or locked away, so to speak, in the permafrost, there's this large capacity to be able to affect climate change at a global level, depending on how these fluxes or emissions, so to speak, of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane change with climate change. So we're really trying to understand how all the different processes that affect these greenhouse gas fluxes are changing over space and time. So that takes a lot of work and a lot of different stations and measurements. But that's essentially what we're looking at is these land surface atmosphere interactions in the Arctic boreal region. So how do we measure greenhouse gas fluxes? One of the main ways that we do this is through a technique called eddy covariance. So eddy covariance is a technique that's founded on the principle that these gases, these greenhouse gases, are transported by eddies of, so wind eddies of various different sizes and speeds and shapes. So to do that, we need to measure wind speed as well as these gases of interest, so greenhouse gas fluxes. So I have here a little schematic of one of these towers that I mentioned earlier. These are eddy covariance towers or micrometeorological towers. So you can see on the left here, it's equipped with a lot of different instruments, a lot of which are typical for basic weather stations, but we've got a couple instruments here that are specific to the eddy covariance technique. So you can see here as well, I've drawn an eddy of wind or a gust of wind along with a molecule of a gas of interest. So the idea is that if you know the properties of the wind itself and you know how the densities of the molecules of a gas of interest are changing over time, you can say how much of a particular gas is coming from a certain area over a unit time. So we're looking at the vertical velocity and the concentration of the gas of interest. So just as a quick example, if at time A, you have this gust of wind and it's carrying 10 molecules of methane upwards, and then at time 2, you have a gust of wind that is carrying only 1 molecule of methane downwards. You can say there's a net of 9 molecules of methane that's coming from that given area over that time. And so the gases and the properties of wind are measured at a rate of 10 times a second, which is quite rapid. And then these measurements are averaged over 30-minute intervals to give us an idea of how these fluxes or emissions, so to speak, are changing over time. So that's kind of the very basic explanation of eddy covariance theory. So I've got here as well the eddy covariance instrumentation in further detail in this little pop-out window. So we've got a sonic anemometer here. This is the taller instrument on the right with sort of the prongs, the 6 prongs there. So this uses properties of sound, so how sound waves change with wind in order to measure wind speeds in 3 directions. And then on the left, you can see the smaller cylindrical gas analyzer. And so this essentially just uses an infrared laser to measure the densities of molecules of a gas of interest, in this case, carbon dioxide or water vapor. So like I said, we have a bunch of these eddy covariance towers as part of this project. And essentially we're trying to build this regional network in order to get a better idea of how these greenhouse gas fluxes change over a larger scale. And I've situated the towers that are part of this project in relation to the above core study domain. Um, so I believe that these towers are used to ground truth some of the work that is done with the above projects, but I'm sure there's people on this call that know a lot more about that than I do. So we have a number of different towers that are included in our network. You can see here there are 2 towers designated by HPC and TVC. These are the northernmost towers, and they are both within 50 kilometers of Inuvik, which is just 4 hours from the Arctic coast. So I've included some photos of these towers here in further detail. These 2 towers are really interesting to compare between because one of them is treed. The one here on the right, HPC, is treed. That's great, Peter. Good to know. And then TVC, this one is not treed, so it's above the tree line. So despite being within 100 kilometers of one another, these towers are really interesting for comparing fluxes between. Then we have another tower just further south, SMC. So this tower is near Wrigley, Northwest Territories. This is within a boreal zone, discontinuous permafrost. And then we have some towers near SCC. So for anyone that knows, this is Scotty Creek Research Station, which is near Fort Simpson, NWT. So there are 2 towers that are set up there. And then we have some towers at Deering Lake Research Station, designated by DL. Sorry I couldn't get some better zoomed in photos of these towers in time, but essentially there's 4 different towers at this site with varying types of vegetation. So really interesting for comparing fluxes across different levels of vegetation. And then we've recently added a couple towers into this monitoring network in northern Alberta near Lutos. So these 2 towers are in burned sites. Really interesting for looking at how burn sites regrow and how this affects greenhouse gas fluxes. So these are essentially all the towers that are included in this network, and you can see they're really varied, and I'm definitely lucky to be able to capture some of the dynamics of the landscapes across NWT using these towers. So I've kind of talked a little bit about the project, what we're trying to do, what's involved, the instrumentation. So now I'm going to get into what we've achieved so far, because in my opinion, we've achieved a lot. One of the major goals that we had for this project was to develop and create a virtual learning course that I mentioned before. So we have done that. We've checked that off the list. We've created a virtual learning course for all the project members that are involved in our project. So the intention of this course was to go over scientific theory, technical theory, and fieldwork safety. So those were our major sort of intentions for creating this course. And you can see here different screenshots of some of the videos that I've created for this course. So these are just some of the people that I've interacted with in order to give people some good learning content. So this course was designed to go over sort of an introduction to the project and what we're doing. So that was really great. we got together people from all across the territory on a Zoom call, and we got to know one another. We talked about the project, what we wanted to do, what were some potential hurdles. So that was a great way of getting everyone together during what was still a COVID period of time. Um, I created 6 different videos dedicated to fieldwork preparation and safety. So this was mainly interviews with different students talking about their fieldwork experiences. And then I also created sort of a lecture on what to expect and how to prepare yourself and how to be safe in the field. Um, there was a lecture that was kindly provided by Dr. Ellen Humphreys on eddy covariance theory for this virtual course. So we thank her for that. It was tailored to our audience, which was really great. I also compiled videos for to go over eddy covariance instrumentation, so all the different sensors and loggers. So I compiled videos from both Lycor Biogeosciences and Campbell Scientific, who both provide us with instrumentation for this project. So that was really great for going over all the detailed instrumentation and that's used for this project. And then I created 3 different videos for site-specific expectations. So that was just chatting with different PIs or professors that are associated with the research stations that are affiliated with this project. And then lastly, we went over integrating measurements within networks. So I actually compiled videos with a lot of the other projects that we're partnered with in order to give people an idea of how these kind of networks are built and how these measurements are integrated in larger networks. So I compiled videos from PermafrostNet, Global Water Futures, NASA Above, and Ameriflux. So these are some of the projects that we're partnered with, just to give our project members an idea of some of the other research that's going on in Northwest Territories. And then lastly, we're going to go over future plans for this project to finish this virtual course. So that actually got pushed to being an in-person part of this project. So essentially that's all the content that I went over for this virtual learning course. Overall, it's 12 videos that are accessible from our YouTube page. This is called Atmos Bios. If anyone's interested in watching them, especially for people that haven't yet gone to the field for grad students, I've heard that it's really helpful. So definitely feel free to go to our YouTube channel and check them out. So speaking of videos, I've included one of the videos that I created for this virtual learning course. I'm going to try to play it. We'll see how it goes. Just keep in mind, this is actually the first video that I've ever created for this course and in general. So the quality is not great, but it still gives people a good idea of what to expect when you're going into the field for the first time. I'm not too confident that it's going to play. And I can definitely post the YouTube link. We're always looking for more views there. So I'm not going to try to play this video because I don't think that it's going to work today, but I will post the link to our YouTube channel in the chat when we're done.
Sorry about that, Emma.
That's all good. So what else have we achieved so far? So throughout this project, or at least since I've started this past July of 2021, there have been 5 different fieldwork campaigns that we've accomplished. So this is one of our major sort of milestones. So within these campaigns, there have been seven different locals that have joined us for this work and have at very least got to go out to the sites, see the infrastructure, learn how to download some of the data, learn some scientific skills, as you can see here. We've got a couple photos on the, well, all 3 photos on the bottom are of our Inuvialuit locals that we have partnered for this project. So they actually got to come out with us to a site near Inuvik and learn some snow science skills this past March. So this has been a really, really big milestone for our project. And we expect them to continue on our project as they had a really great experience learning about snow science techniques. So these fieldwork campaigns have been mostly to maintain the infrastructure that I've talked about, but also to build those connections with the locals that have expressed interest in this project so far. So these different fieldwork campaigns have included visits to Wrigley, Fort Simpson, Inuvik, Kikiza, and Yellowknife, all within Northwest Territories, Lutos in Alberta, and Fort Nelson in BC. So we've covered a lot of area and we're keeping our instruments running. So that's been a major goal of this project, is just to keep our infrastructure going and more efficiently by creating local capacity. And we're doing just that. So another big milestone for us that we have yet to accomplish, but is coming up very quickly, is an in-person workshop that we have planned. So this workshop is planned for Yellowknife in May, so it's less than a month away from now. So this workshop intends to go over a lot of the safety certification that is really, really necessary for this kind of work. So wilderness first aid, fall protection, which is necessary for climbing the towers. So we use harnesses and make sure that everyone has fall protection, and wildlife awareness as well. A lot of this knowledge, people will already have going into this project, but we just like to go over the basis. And then the second week of this workshop, we'll go over a lot of scientific skills. So we'll be doing training, setting up a MET station. We'll be going over different data logger training. So we're actually getting Campbell Scientific to come up and go over the data loggers that we use at our towers. So this is going to be really, really useful for everyone on our project. And we're going to do some soil coring and drone training as well. So like I said before, although the focus of this project is really these eddy covariance stations, we've really expanded to include different kinds of scientific skills so that people can have a more well-rounded skill set. And then also part of this workshop, we have presentations from various different groups, from GNWT, Ducks Unlimited, Dutcho First Nations Grand Chief, NWT Geological Survey, and various academic scientists. So we're going to have a lot of different perspectives talking about climate change and talking about the work that they do at this workshop as well. So it's going to be a really great event, and more to come for that. Some of the other milestones and achievements that we've hit with this project, like I was kind of just talking about, we're diversifying our climate change monitoring skills to include different skills. So drone training, soil coring, snow carbon measurements, and snow measurements in general. So this is in order to give people more opportunities. Some of the other major milestones that we've hit, we've secured additional funding through a lot of different proposals. This is through our research group with the University of Montreal, so Oliver Sonnentag, who has secured this additional funding. And so this funding will help us to provide more consistent opportunities for locals in the North for work. So this is a really big achievement for us. We've developed new partnerships with Université de Trois-Rivières and Northumbria University. So this is through some of the work that we do near Inuvik, Northwest Territories. And these partnerships will only give more opportunities to locals near Inuvik to develop their scientific skills and to also improve scientist-local relationships in the North. Like I already said before as well, our monitoring network has expanded to include 2 towers in northern Alberta. This is out of our partnership with University of Alberta. I've talked a lot about what we've achieved, and I've been very positive about everything, but we have definitely had challenges as well. I'm sure that everyone has had challenges through these last couple years. One of the things that I have noticed through this project is that northern realities aren't always um, considered or really understood by southern expectations. So things are a lot different in the north, and being the mediator between um, these northern realities and southern parties is a bit challenging. So this is things like, a lot of stuff just doesn't really work in the winter in the north. Things are slower, communication is slower, and this is something that definitely needs to be considered. Um, Sometimes payment expectations in smaller communities aren't really exactly understood by large organizations, and it's something that may be done for the first time. So it's just these little details that are worked through, but we've definitely learned a lot about making northern realities a consideration for our southern parties through this project. So we've been learning a lot about that. Communication sometimes has been hard because band offices have been closed due to COVID. Totally understandable, but sometimes communication is a bit slower, and it's something that we need to plan for and that we've adapted to. Time and weather related challenges when in the field. I'm sure everyone can relate to this who's done field work, especially when it's -30 and things just aren't working, and maybe you've got 4 hours of sunlight. It can be really hard to accomplish some of the fieldwork goals that you have, but this is something that you just have to account for and build more time for. So this is definitely some challenges. And then the overall sentiment towards starting something new and keeping the project momentum going has definitely been challenging with COVID. But I will say now that things are starting to shift, that we have so many people that are reaching out to us and saying, hey, what about this project? What's going on? How can I get involved again? So I will say that project momentum has really picked up within the last couple of weeks for obvious reasons. So that's all I have to present on my project today. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks to all of our project partners who I've shown here. We wouldn't be able to do the things that we do without them. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma. Um, do we have any questions from the audience? While people are thinking, I have a question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what kind of recruitment efforts you did to get participants involved in the project. I'd definitely be curious about that.
Definitely. So recruitment started before I was even on the project through Oliver Sonnentag's efforts. So before the project even started, we made sure to reach out to a bunch of different First Nations groups to make sure that we had their support. Um, and through these partnerships, that's kind of where a lot of the recruitment started, was through the partners that supported our project proposal itself. So I sort of started there. I had a lot of help from uh, people at GNWT, or Government of Northwest Territories. So because I work in Yellowknife, I actually work at a GNWT office, and there are a lot of people there that have really great relationships with people across the territory. So they were really helpful in connecting me with a lot of different people that they knew would be interested in this kind of work. So it was a really good starting place in order to be, introduced to people instead of having to cold call. And then from there, it was just sort of following those initial leads and calling people, emailing, meeting with people, getting a sense of the interest. Yeah, it was just following through with all the initial leads that were given to me. We sent out flyers to everyone that we thought might be interested, and even word of mouth as well. One of the people who's involved in this project is actually someone from my local running group. So it's basically just about meeting as many people as you can, either through others or through friends here. So
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. I see also that one of your partners is the Aurora College, and if I remember correctly, um, at least when I visited there, which was now 9 years ago, maybe I think that they had a like environmental technician training program. Is that related to some of the work that you've been doing, or?
Yeah, definitely. Um, so they have a technician program there, and I know that the technicians do work at some of the research stations. But when I asked them about this project, they wanted to make sure that other locals also had the opportunity to work with us as well. So I did actually meet someone through Aurora College in order to find people in Inuvik. So they have been really great in terms of connecting me to other people, but we're not directly related to their technician program.
Great, thanks. Anybody else on the call have a question for Emma? You should be able to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. Maybe Emma, while we're waiting for a second, if you can put the link to the YouTube, that would be excellent.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Um, and I think I have to stop sharing my
Oh,
screen in order to
probably,
do
yes.
that.
It can be difficult to see the chat while you're sharing, so.
Yeah. Um,
So, as a reminder, I said this at the beginning of the call, but I think some people might have joined us a little bit late. Um, we are recording this, and within a couple days, we'll be sure to put the recording up on the website so that you can reference it and share it with other folks. And again, if you're interested in presenting or getting on the email distribution list, if somebody forwarded this invitation to you and you want to hear about more activities that we're doing, please do feel free to reach out. And it doesn't seem like there are any other questions, but I want to thank you so much, Emma, for presenting on this, what I think is really important work. And from my perspective, it seems like this is the type of thing that more and more Southern institutions are doing in terms of, really investing in capacity building and co-production with communities. So it's great to hear about an example where this is working within the domain that we're studying on. So really appreciate that.
mhm. Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to present, and thank you so much for having me. We're definitely trying our best to get there.
Yeah. Okay, I am going to stop the recording and thank you to everyone who joined us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
You as well. Thank you so much.